Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Resume Revive Career Services YouTube channel. It is your go to channel for all of the things career related. And for the month of August, we are focusing on our Back to Career focus, where we have been diving into all of the things related to soft skills. Today, I am so excited to bring on a very special guest. Her name is MJ, and she is the founder of Advisory Avenue. She has 10 plus years of human resource experience. So she currently consult and work with different professionals on how to navigate the workplace. And today we're going to have a conversation about how do you navigate through the workplace when you are in a diverse setting, whether it's corporate or nonprofit. How do you become a professional in those type of settings and just work through the different things in the workplace setting? So I just would like to start off by saying, I know sometimes you may show up at a job or show up for work and you feel like you don't quite fit into that place, and it feels very scary, and sometimes you can feel very nervous about the situation. And so I would like to just welcome MJ to the YouTube channel and have her to dive into this conversation on what does she think, what do you think it means, MJ, to show up as a professional or create a professional demeanor in the workplace?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Camille, for having me. That is such a great question. And simply just chatting about 1 minute offline with you was like getting me going already. But essentially, I feel, in Advisory Avenue, we coach people through situations, right? There's always a specific
Mhm.
situation. So this is one of them. I have onboarded and took people around when I've worked inside corporate America more so. Their first day, right? Everyone is nervous. I just had to say that out for everyone listening. Everyone, no matter what level, is always nervous their first day, whether like you're a junior level, mid level, or senior level employee, because you're kind of figuring out the place, right? So the
That's
nerves
right.
do kick in no matter what. So no, don't worry about that. So it's like after that time period, right? Sometimes it takes people
Mhm.
that day, few days, weeks. Everyone is different, right? So it's just like also it's just like meeting a new person, a new friend, like kind of look at it that way. But to answer your question, how to show up as a professional in a diverse place or you as a diverse employee, I
Mhm.
would say it's like knowing your audience, and your audience is the staff and the people around you that you'll be working with, right? So
Mhm.
it's not to say that you should always be molding yourself into the company, right? You should still have
Mhm.
that sense of authenticity to you, but also reading the room is going to be super important because you have, there everyone says show up at your full self, and it's almost a little bit unrelatable or impossible because you have to learn how to adapt in a situation, which is why there's words like professionalism versus outside of work culture, right? So in the workplace, you're going to learn how does my manager, behave? How are the people behaving? And kind of find a way that matches your energy. Like I said, that you don't want to change yourself for the job, but you also don't want to just show up that doesn't in a way that is unflattering to the organization. And that's something that takes time, right? Especially if you're someone junior or you're someone who is re-entering the workplace or changing industries, that takes time. But I would say the best way to kind of get your foot in the door of like, how am I supposed to be at this place? It's scary. It's my first week. I'm unsure how to behave. I would just say take your time and observe. There's nothing wrong with being analytical about this type
Right.
of thing. You don't want to be
Mhm.
too much in your head, right? You want to be, the great, Kamiki, for example, walk in and you want to be yourself, but also
Mhm.
learn how the system goes. And then once you kind of figure out how people move, you're going to feel better. You're going to see, this is how they do things. Let me insert myself and how I can fit in because they brought you onto that company to add another type of person to the branch, right? They met you, they interviewed you, they hired you. So you can't ever forget that they wanted you. So they liked what they saw and they, gave you an offer.
Yes, I'm glad that you said that. And I know a lot of times I talk about, even with professionals that I coach, before they start interviewing, of course, you are to study the work culture, but you don't really know the work culture until you actually get in the room and start to observe and get to meet people. So it's not going to be one of those things just because you kind of study people in the interview that you will just show up at a place and know exactly what's going on. So I'm glad that you brought attention to those things, that you have to take the time and just try to observe the spaces that you're in, and also how different people personalities are in the workplace, and just learning how to work through the different communication styles in the workplace. That all could be a part of also how you navigate. And I wanted to ask you, what are just some of those key attributes that defines a professional demeanor? Sometimes we think it's about how we show up and how we dress, our style, but it's really more to adopting that professional demeanor in the workplace. So I wanted you to just kind of talk about what are some key attributes that the people who are listening can think about as far as creating that professional demeanor for the workplace.
Sure. And I mean, of course, your aesthetics and how you look is definitely one of them. You want to make sure you're matching the culture, right? So you don't want to be wearing a suit to a company that's pretty business casual.
Mhm.
That's basic
Yeah.
things, but different attributes I think are very important. Is I think emotional intelligence is a huge thing, and that's something I could probably talk about for a while. So I'll elaborate on that a little
Mhm.
bit later. But I
Okay.
think just understanding who you're around and knowing yourself is going to be important. That sets you apart, and shows like your professionalism in a way. I think also um, putting yourself out there in terms of like figuring out how you work, your working style, and how that's
Mhm.
going to blend in with the colleagues that you're going to be working with day to day, and
Mhm.
definitely your manager. If you see, for example, your manager is super busy, but you know that you need a weekly one-on-one, or you're okay doing bi-weekly one-on-ones, like setting that up yourself and initiating that. You don't always have to wait for your manager to do something if you know that's something you need. And managers are also looking for that kind of
Mhm.
proactivity because they're really busy, right? So sometimes they may forget that sometimes people need them to reach out. So there's nothing wrong with you reaching out. I think that also shows professionalism. Like, this is how I work, and I want to make sure I'm working well with you. How do you work? I always tell people to ask their managers questions like that. And I think
Mhm.
another um, attribute would be seeking feedback, and then also like being proactive in the workplace, right? So, in terms of feedback, first week is, who knows, everyone's first week is different, but usually that's like the, you're getting acclimated to things, you're figuring out, and your boss is also figuring you out too, right? They're
Mhm.
making sure probably you're having a good first week, and they're getting their money's worth, right? Usually that's how managers think.
Mhm.
For you, you're trying to figure out, do I like this place? Is my team correct? So I would say after a few weeks, then you would seek out feedback from your manager to make sure like everything's aligning for what you are perceiving, because perception is everything, especially in a professional setting, because you may think that something's happening that is not, like, you maybe are being perceived in a different way. You may think you're doing not well, and your manager's like, no, you're doing amazing, or it could be the opposite. So seeking that feedback is going to show a level of professionalism as well.
That's huge, MJ, that you lifted those things up, because it's so important to take the initiative to ask questions. And I know that that can kind of feel scary at first, but you would only know unless you go and actually ask those questions. So just seeking feedback, and like you said, just knowing how your manager works will make a huge difference in how you also feel in your role, because you could be sitting there just wondering, how are they feeling about this and that? How am I working in my role? Am I supporting my role in the best way I need to, or is there some feedback that I need to get as well? So I'm glad that you said that you have to go and seek out that feedback as a professional. Sometimes you can just sit around and just wait for the feedback, because you're right. Sometimes the managers are very busy and they just may not have gotten around to doing it. So just taking that initiative is very huge here. So, how important do you think professional branding is in the workplace? How should a professional build out their professional brand?
Oh my goodness, I think it is very important. That's something I learned probably a little bit later after college, right? At first, I thought, because I worked mostly in like marketing places, people who have portfolios, something to showcase their work. So I'm thinking in my
Mhm.
head, that's what a personal brand is, right? That's how recruiters are finding these people, is, people like me looking for these people. But I had a supervisor one time that told me, no, everyone has a personal brand, and you just have to figure out if you are going to enhance your brand or let people be the makers of your brand, right? So
Mhm.
I never forgot that. So I think it's absolutely important because, just like she said, you can either continuously improve yourself and create your own brand, or let people have that perception of you, because unfortunately, perception is reality, especially in corporate America. It happens in nonprofit as well. How what you think you're doing is not always what is being perceived by the outside world, like, hey, your colleagues and your managers, right? So you may be a great employee. You have your head down, you're working, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, you're hitting every task, but no one hears from you. Maybe no one, you're not speaking up in meetings, you're not doing anything that's kind of wowing the manager, or you don't know their working style. So to them, you're just like a steady employee, not spectacular
Mhm.
employee, you're steady, because just because it's something as simple as they don't know much about you. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. Politics plays a big impact, I think, on someone's professional career, which is why
Mhm.
personal branding is important, right? So you want to take that initiative for yourself, because you're the only one that can create that, right? So even
Mhm.
if you don't have a portfolio of work, like I used to think, you yourself, your resume is a portfolio almost. But once you pass that stage and you get into the company, how you appear to others is going to be your personal brand. You're a walking live, portfolio to others, right? So how you work with others in meetings, how you work with other in projects, how you receive feedback, how you give
Mhm.
feedback, all those things attribute to your personal brand, and that's how people are viewing you. So they might not remember, Kamiki was really great, but I don't remember too much about her. But if you did something, they'll
Yeah.
always remember that, oh, I don't remember the project, but she was so great on that one assignment, and she won us a deal and this and that. I don't remember what it was, but I would hire her in 2 seconds. They don't even
Yeah.
remember anything. It's just how you resonated with them, right? And that's
Mhm.
really what a personal brand is. And it takes time. You don't have to rush it, especially, like I said, depending on where you are in your career, but it's something you need to constantly be working on. And you can rebrand yourself as much as you want, right? You can rebrand your resume.
Yeah.
You can brand yourself. If you're not liking, like, you spent 7 years at a job and never got recognized, even though you were doing an amazing job, go to the next place and rebrand yourself. Repurpose the skills you have, enhance it, learn more, and show yourself how you want to be seen to others. I think is really going to be key.
I really love that, MJ, that you could rebrand yourself several different times. And I like that you also said the importance of just building your professional brand is more to it than your resume. Now, your resume is the profile of the work that you have completed over the years. But once you get into the workplace, you have to show up as a professional and do things to stand out as well. So I'm glad that you brought that up. You really had some great feedback on how you can build out that professional brand. And I also like that you said it takes time. So starting out in the professional world, I don't just have my brand at that point. I have to actually work sometimes and build up experiences and work on projects. And maybe once I receive, or if not, accolades or different ways that I could work into my professional branding. So I wanted to go into how important do you think communication is in the workplace? How does a person really navigate communication?
Communication, that is very interesting, because you want to be in a place where you are someone that everyone can approach, whether it's someone a senior level above you, people below you. You should have a kind of even keel. MJ is very approachable. Let me, I can approach her on any subject, whether or not I'm not sure. You could be the new person in the room, or you can be like the head of a team or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So, at Advisor Avenue, we always kind of coach people through that, because I think speaking up is a big, big problem, especially people of diverse backgrounds. Is
Mhm.
they're really afraid, like, of different things. The imposter syndrome is really big. Feeling, maybe, will I be retaliated? Do I even feel that I am in the position to ask these things? I'm too new, or I should have known by now. So many things run through people's head in terms of communication. But I just want to say that everyone loves communication. It is how you make the other person feel when you are communicating whatever you want to communicate, right? So positive communication, everyone loves that, right? Everyone likes to talk about themselves. Everyone wants to hear something great. During a one-on-one with your manager, they want to hear, you're having a great time. It's the communication part, that I really coach people through when they're afraid to say what they have to say, which is
Mhm.
like either upwards feedback, that's a really big one, or not understanding something they think they should know by now, or just standing up for yourself. You never know, there could be conflict at work or something like that. But
Mhm.
communication style is going to be very key in how you communicate, right? So you really want to focus in on putting the facts out there. Try to take the emotion out of it. You should always have an emotional intelligence of when you're speaking to someone, because you want to know who you're speaking with and how to speak to them. But you want to come to the table with the facts, and you want to always know in the back of your mind, maybe this might not be resolved, but we want to put it on the table to say, like, this is where we agree, this is where we're not going to agree, but let's just get this project done, or let's just get this review, across, fairly. You always want to make it at least fair, and not
That's true.
everyone's going to have a good conversation. One person
Mhm.
might feel, you might be the person that, that is coming out of it like, I wish that it came out differently, or the other person. There's always two ways a conversation can go, but the style is very important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because that could segue us into the strategies that is needed to manage disagreements in the workplace. And I think about when you talked about how you have to bring up or address different issues and just have those conversations. Sometimes those are the tough conversations that people do have difficulty having. I can remember a time when I started out in my career, I probably wouldn't have said much.
Me
You
too.
have that fear of retaliation. But
Yeah.
now, where I am in my career, oh, I need to schedule a time to address this and go over this. And, we just have a conversation where we could leave from there. Maybe we don't agree, but we could leave on a united front. So I know that is one of the things that's hard for people to have tough conversations if it's needed. So, what are some strategies around a way that you can manage disagreements and conflicts in the workplace?
Oh my goodness, this is like a key part of Advisory Avenue, because I think a lot of people have that fear of retaliation, because HR is supposed to be the place in your company where they're supposed to help you manage that, and walk you through how to communicate with your boss, with your coworker. And I think people just fear that maybe it will be shared, the confidentiality will be broken. So that's
Mhm,
really how we kind of came into play with this a bit, because we really keep confidentiality very sacred at Advisory Avenue.
mhm.
But all that to say is that, when a few examples I had of, strategies I told people before is, like I said earlier, figuring out who you're speaking to. Like, that is always going to be a big thing in working in corporate America, nonprofit, wherever it could be,
Yes.
CVS. Like, knowing who you're speaking to, and maybe understanding that everyone's triggers are different. Everyone takes things differently. You may think you're saying things in an even keel way, very calmly, or in a non disrespectful manner, but you don't know this person. So it's like, you can't
Mhm.
evaluate everyone you're speaking to, but you can kind of figure out, and like, I don't want to say itinerary, but a way to make sure that you're coming off in a sense like, this is just a positive conversation. I just want to get my point across, and I want to hear your side. So you want to, a little back and forth in a good way,
Yes.
not back and
Mhm,
forth in an argumentative way. You want to come to them in an approachable fashion, and to make
mhm.
them also be able to speak back to you. Like, this is, you could come to me and say, MJ, I didn't really like that comment, that you said in the meeting. Someone that internalizes things like that could be like, whoa, what do you get defensive right away? But
That's
if
right.
you put something on the calendar, it's like, hey, you know what? Can we grab a coffee? Because, I would love to just have a chat with you. start off like that, or you don't. I'm not saying you have to buy everybody coffee, right? But
Yeah.
just an
Yeah.
example,
Hmm.
and you start from there and just say, hey, listen, like I really think you have some great points, great ideas. We've been working on this project for a while. I just want to address this one thing because I think personally it made me feel this type of way. This is how I felt when this was said, and I know maybe you didn't mean it that way, so I'd love to hear, what did you mean by that?
Hmm.
How could, that's one strategy, right? Figuring out, using I statements, things like that. I know it's a little therapeutical, but it really helps people feel at ease to
Hmm.
speak back to you. I think another strategy to handle conflict is addressing it as early as possible. You don't want to let things like that continue on for months and months and months, because then what will happen is it's going to be me versus you, because somebody's going to is not going to handle it well after all that time. Someone's going to explode, right?
Hmm.
Or someone's always going to have someone who takes more of their side than the others, because now it's going to be like your word against mine. It's always going to end up bad if you keep prolonging the situation. Addressing
Hmm.
it as quickly as possible is also a good strategy. And I think another good strategy for conflict management is, if you don't feel comfortable and you don't feel comfortable going to HR, maybe just having someone else in the room with you, and not in HR, because that's threatening for people, right?
Yes.
Could just be having your manager just mediate in a way that's not, no one's getting in trouble. The person maybe who's ever on the project, let's say,
Hmm.
comes in that room and figures out, okay, maybe we will not be on the same page, but MJ, you do this, John, you do this, and I think we can just like blend it together, and that's it. You know what I mean? You don't have to be friends with everybody at work, and that's a whole nother subject. I think making sure you're not friends with everybody at work will really
That's
benefit
right.
you.
It would.
Um, and yeah, so I would say those are a few good conflict strategies I've helped people before.
That's really great. And I also wanted to ask about, how do you use your emotional intelligence to navigate those challenging situations? Because, like you said, if you let it fester, a lot of people actually leave jobs behind, things like that, that they just could have
Oh my goodness.
taken time out to have a chat with someone to address situations. So, this is really a huge thing in the professional workplace or setting, that a lot of times it's hard for people to understand how to have those conversations. So, what would you say? How would you use emotional intelligence to just navigate through those challenges?
Let me start with that. I think emotional intelligence is something that has been coming up recently, right? In the workplace, and people using it and people leading with it more, which I love. But because it's more recent, a lot of people aren't at the same level as everyone. Some people are just starting on their journey, some people are nowhere on it, and some people have really been working on their
Mhm.
emotional intelligence in the workplace, right? So I think the first thing would be is understanding that everyone is not going to be where you are mentally, and then not
Mhm.
have the EQ that you have. So you could be speaking to someone who's never even worked on it. Especially, I hate to bring like generational things into it, but
Yes,
there are some people who've been leading companies for 40 years. They never cared to think like that,
that's
right?
right.
And they
Mhm.
don't have to think like that, just but decide if you're going to work for that type of person or not. But you have to understand, this is where the emotional intelligence comes from, is that everyone is on their journey or not even on a journey. So
Mhm.
you might be speaking to someone and you think that you're being super logical, you're putting them how they may be feeling into play, but they're not putting yours, for example. And getting mad is where you're still working on the emotional intelligence part, right?
Mhm.
But then you understanding, like, okay, you know what, I know I make sense, right? and
Mhm.
and this is not in a narcissistic way or anything, just really understanding that they don't they're not on the same playing field as you, right? So I think that's a big one with using emotional intelligence, is just knowing that, and also knowing that your self-worth is not tied into your current job.
That's
That's a big one
huge.
too. Yeah,
Mhm.
because like I said, if you got hired, they think you can do the job. They
Mhm.
either think you can do it steadily, or they think you could do it phenomenally. Either way, they were confident in your skills. So
That's right.
never forget that. So if now you're stepping into that, and you've been unfortunately tasked with a bad manager, or maybe a disorganized company or something like that, and then they're making you feel like you don't know what you're doing, but let's say for the last 15 years you knew, it's most likely not you. So you don't want to ever get caught up with thinking that whatever's happening is really you, because then that's where imposter syndrome can come in. That's
Mhm.
where you might lose some sense of like emotional intelligence and start to like um, react, right, and or start
Mhm.
doing your job not the way you performed before. You know, a lot of things could happen. So I think EQ is knowing that no, it's this organization, it's not meant for me, and I think I need to leave because I tried. I put the effort. You know, I sought help. I got feedback, and it's not
Mhm.
working for me. So I'm not going to let this ruin my self esteem. I'm going to go to the next place, or I'm going to open my own thing, or whatever it is. Just knowing that if one place didn't work out, it is not always you. You always have to figure out, is it a skill you need to improve, or was this just a bad company or a bad manager? People leave for just a single manager all the time. The
Mhm.
company could be
All the
amazing.
time.
Yes. Yeah.
I like that you said that sometimes you have to do a self-assessment almost of of yourself. You know your own experiences, you know your own skill sets that you bring to the role. And if you get to a space where you know you feel as though you're not performing in the role like you should be, then it may not all the time be you. I love that you said that because what happens is that people will stay in a place for a very long time and are mistreated when you could just simply, and sometimes it's not that simple, but you may have to just do a reassessment and go to another company that you know will appreciate the value that you can add to the company. So I like that you said just taking a step back sometimes and looking to say, is it really me or what's really going on here? That's
Yeah.
really good that you said that, MJ, because I know that people hang around or just wonder, and you know, and then you can't even perform well in your role because you're always second guessing yourself and wonder
Yes.
if you're doing a good job. And it has nothing to do with you most of the time. It could just be that
Mm-hmm.
you in an organization that's not a good fit and you just may have to move and go somewhere different.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think just piggyback what you're saying is just I just get so passionate about this one point because so many
Sure.
people kind of get down on themselves, especially, you know, people of diverse backgrounds and like, oh, you know, they were so happy at the last place, but they're leaving, let's say, for money or relocation, whatever the reason is.
Mhm.
And then they get to a place where it's not a fit and they start to, it's like you said, second guess. And it's like, it's kind of sad to see because they're not realizing that you have a lot of years experience and you've never had an issue. Let's think, like, is it you, or is it, you know, just a bad fit? And sometimes people get promoted quickly and they're not,
Mhm.
they haven't been trained to be managers, or an
Mhm.
organization grew too quick and, you know, they're in, you know, the stage of growing and not everything is settled in correctly, and you're someone who needs more of a polished establishment. You just, you know, there's always reasons. So if you
Yeah.
have the luxury of keeping that job and looking for something else because it's not working out or starting to make you feel the opposite of how you typically feel when you're working, then do it.
Oh, we could really stay there for so long. I'm passionate about that topic as well, MJ. So I wanted to shift a bit because we know that so many people do have all of these things going on, just how they're moving around in the workplace to become a professional. What are some platforms that you would suggest to build up their professional development skills or take courses to, you know, improve in some things that they may need to touch on to just be a better professional in the workplace?
So in terms of specific, I used to keep like a whole list of different things, but with
Mhm.
AI taking over, there's so many things popping up every day that I think everyone can take advantage of. You know, you can learn
Yeah.
so many things, just depending on your industry, your field. You know, I just sometimes if I want to know a trend, like I'll just go on one of the AI stats, like what trends are happening or something like that,
That's
and
right.
making sure like I, you know, so I don't have a specific resource I use in the last couple of years because I realized they're closing or they're not keeping up to date with the material. That's really the
Mhm.
biggest issue. Like the resources aren't up to date. So I think AI is really important. I don't want them to take over our jobs, but I think for
Right.
resourcing, they are
Mhm.
always the most accurate, the most updated, right? Also, when we're speaking about in the company, I always say to utilize what they have. Figure out their the employee resources, whether that's groups, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
different groups for different types of people. There might be mentorship programs. There might be, those coffee and chat kind of programs. There might be events, networking things that you can attend that you may not be on the same project of. Maybe someone else in your company is working on it, and you just want to attend to see, is this something I want to pursue, or I want to, figure out how to have that skill set to move into that department or anything like that. Utilize your company's first, right? Or, a lot of companies give credit for school or things
Yeah.
like that, and they don't advertise it that much. So it's like
You have
you have to
that.
be, going back to proactive, you
Hmm.
have to kind of seek it out a bit. They, like I said, people get really busy. Maybe the HR rep didn't tell you, or the onboarding specialist, whoever it is that kind of onboarding you, gave you a deck and said, here, look through this, and your first day and the first week's overwhelming, you forgot about that deck, and you lost so many good resources, right? So just follow
Hmm.
up. And then, like I said, I think AI is also a really cool way to stay up to date. I know LinkedIn has always been there, but they have some pretty good
Yes.
articles, and people are always sharing what they do.
Hmm.
I still look at it.
They also have
And
some courses built in through
yes,
LinkedIn
yes.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's really good. And, I would say just, going to networking events and meeting people. Networking is so crucial. And I don't think people realize just knowing. I mean, I think in the back of your head, like, knowing someone it can get you into somewhere, but it's like putting yourself out there to network is the important part, like figuring out what's in your local area, or even traveling, maybe a few
Hmm.
hours down if you could afford it. If not, virtual events are still in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would try those three avenues.
Okay. So, my final question today, and this has been a really great conversation. What advice would you have for anyone who's just trying to navigate the professional in both the corporate and nonprofit world? How could they stay true to themselves when doing that?
Oh my goodness, that I have so many answers. Let me think of. I would say that the best advice I can give you is that work is no different than your personal life. Everyone
Mhm.
has a representative, and it's your job as well as the person you're working for, to figure out, do you want to stay there? Is this going to be best for your career? How can it benefit you at the moment? Figure out what is the benefit at the time for you, whether that's long term or short term in this company. And remembering that it is not always you, and everyone puts on a certain type of representative face, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but don't let that ever affect your self-esteem or your self-worth, because there are other places, and just like your personal life, there's other people, right? So friends, family, romantic, whatever that is, there's no
Mhm.
difference from your job. So just try to think of the workplace very similar to that.
Thank you so much, MJ, on this great conversation on how to navigate through as a professional through the workplace, a diverse workplace. This has been really great and so informative. So I would like to give you the opportunity to tell our audience on how they could reach you if they would like to utilize your services. If you could maybe provide them with your website and or social media handles.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So if anyone, we work off, something that comes up in the moment, whether it's a conflict at work you need advice on, we just give advice. So you just book with us on advisoryapp.com, or if you just have a question and want us to answer a post or anything, we're always on Instagram and TikTok for the most part, or you can email us. My email is in my Instagram at advisoryapp as well. But yeah, we are here to give advice. Like, our consultation is advice. So, however you would see your internal HR is what we do with the confidentiality. So, happy to answer any questions of this if anyone hits us up.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining. If you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the Resume Revive YouTube channel. And please hit the notification bell so that you can receive notifications for our next video. And thank you and have a great day. Bye bye.